Charlie Scheft is a dynamic drummer hailing from Cincinnati, Ohio, now making his mark on the New York City jazz scene. Known for his versatility and electrifying performances, Charlie has played at prestigious events like the Newport Jazz Festival and also graced the iconic venues such as Small's Zinc Bar and Minton's Playhouse. His ability to seamlessly blend tradition with modern influences has made him a sought-after collaborator among some of jazz's most exciting musicians. With a growing reputation as a powerhouse drummer, Charlie continues to captivate audiences and solidify his place in the jazz world. So, Charlie, welcome. Good to see you, man.
Man, thank you for that intro. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well,
I'm honored. Yeah.
I'm a English major, right?
Well,
So everything's good with you, huh?
yeah, everything's great. Um, just trying to think about this. I think I've been in New York for 3 years now, and like the time has simultaneously like really flown by, and then it's like, man, it's only been 3 years because I also feel like very settled here
Yeah,
finally.
well, you were very established in Ohio, unquestionably. I mean, when did you decide I'm going to make the move out east? Was there a specific, did you visit or something or?
Yeah. The pandemic really kind of halted life. What was keeping me in Cincinnati so long, other than all of the creative projects and bands I had, was my father. He was like near death ill for 10 years, and I couldn't move away from him while he was like close to being on his way out. So he passed Christmas Day of 2020. And yeah, very sad, but I know he would have wanted me to like feel free to move wherever. So not having to look after him every day kind of like freed me up a lot. Pandemic happened when it kind of felt like in 2021 things were starting to open up, and we knew that like COVID rent was like way cheaper in New York. My friend Andrew Haug and I kind of took advantage of that opportunity. Be like, hey, if we want to do this, we should do it now. Try to take
Yeah.
advantage of that cheap rent. It also helped that my girlfriend had already moved to New York because she's an actor, and so yeah, it then we wouldn't have to be long distance. So it kind of actually felt like a no brainer at that point with like my dad being gone, things starting to open up. My girlfriend's in New York already. I've always kind of wanted to check out the scene here. And then I had phases where I was like, I'm not so interested.
Well,
But
too, with the COVID thing, also, it's almost like two different lives, essentially. Like,
yeah,
the
yeah.
pre and then the post-COVID in a new city, starting your new life,
I mean, New
with
York is different. It's a different New York now. It's not the same. I mean, I never lived here before the pandemic, but I visited enough to know the difference. Um,
I feel like
so
it's different personally. And
yeah,
some people agree.
it's definitely different, man. You go to Smalls and the jam session scene is like much different than it used to be. I think like more of the established players just don't feel as compelled to like lead the sessions anymore. I don't blame them. If I was here and I was established beforehand, I'd kind of just get comfortable staying inside. And
A lot of people left too.
but yeah, it's a huge thing. A lot of people died too. It's just like
Yeah.
a lot of clubs shut down too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming back, and there's a vibrant scene happening. It just feels like the path and the way of going about it feels like it's a little different. Not that jam sessions are still like a huge part of the scene, but it's a different energy and a different vibe now.
It's a
Where it feels
different culture,
definitely,
different time.
yeah,
It's,
it's not as cutthroat anymore. It's kind of like anybody can get up and do anything, and you're playing with like a bunch of drunk people at the same time, and there's like no standard because nobody really wants to be an enforcer. And I wonder if it's because we're living in a really politically correct time where people are afraid of like being tough love because they don't want to. I don't even know if it's that deep. I
I
just
think
think
it
it's
is. I think we're in a different time where it's sort of,
yeah,
jazz has this very harsh tradition of, um,
tough
you know,
love. Trial by
yeah,
fire, tough love.
bring out the love, but then mix with the cancel culture and the political correctness
Yeah,
of the modern world. How can that coexist in the same way it used to?
it's definitely tough. And people who have done that, they've definitely gotten crap for it.
I've
So
heard some stories
yeah.
recently that I can't, yeah. Um,
But
I,
anyway, I mean, all things considered, I'm happy to be like, call this home and
yeah,
to
no, that's
not
great.
feel like out of place or anything. So
No, for sure, for sure. And Charlie, I'd like to talk a little bit about performing for you. I mean, I've had the honor to play with you and
man, likewise.
I mean, you're such a fantastic drummer, and so much there, and I'm sure so much is even there in there now. I'm hope we'll rectify that soon and play again.
Yeah.
I'd like to know a little bit about your mindset about performing because
Mm.
obviously it's fun and rewarding, that sort of thing.
Mm.
But what's challenging for you? Even if it's some people the playing may not be challenging, but what is it about the actual performing in front of people that's a challenge?
Okay, so the act of performing, what is challenging within that? I mean, I could answer this like it depends on the gig. Like I have a gig tomorrow that I'm like trying to prepare this music for, and it's like music I've never heard, some hard original music by this great pianist, and it's like all these things I'm listening to the demo, and all of a sudden it's this thing in 11, and all of a sudden
Eleven?
I'm hearing like I'm actually feeling the song an eighth note off. It's like all the bass hits are on the E's and the U's of every down. It's like snap. So that's like the most fresh example of just like, well, sometimes learning the music can be challenging, and if I don't really have that down, then I'm not going to feel that free to like um be like completely expressive in the moment because I'm gonna have to divert some attention to like focusing on this, and so that might take me out of the moment of being able to interact freely.
Would there be any
But
challenging moments for you if there was a gig where just standards were called and you were all comfortable with all of them? Would you think
no,
any?
no, I don't think so. I don't really, and this kind of thing too. I try to be as prepared as I can so that I don't have to think or divert my attention away from the moment. I try to just, you know, we have our language mastered enough. Not that it means that we know every word, but we know what we want to convey well enough to where we don't have to think about it so that I can just respond to you freely without having to like prepare a whole thing and recite a monologue that I prepared.
So you're big on the preparation that comes beforehand, just being ready to go.
Yeah, I try to be with whatever it is I'm called to do. Fortunately, a lot of the gigs I do, I feel like the prep hasn't been that much, but sometimes you got to learn like a whole, like, I don't know, especially with the wedding gigs that I do. Like, in the beginning, it used to be like 50 songs you got to have memorized. And like as a drummer, like looking at a sheet of music won't really help you. You got to have the tempo internalized because you got to go straight. So like there were some learning curves there, even though that music is like, a little easier to play. Um,
Like
I don't
GB
know.
type stuff, like playing pop
Yeah,
tunes.
just pop, Motown, soul stuff. I mean, I'm just kind of rambling about different kinds of gigs and prep. Yeah, I try to be as prepared as I can, of course, so that I can be as free and
Does it
have as
feel
much
like
fun as I can.
Yeah, does it feel like two different worlds for you when you're going on to play, like, let's say a trio gig? Let's say Friday night is a trio gig at a club, and then Saturday night is a wedding gig with the big band out in Long Island. Like,
Yeah,
how's
yeah.
that feel?
Um, I mean, the way you're gonna play and the amount of freedom you have is going to be different. I feel like the smaller the ensemble, and if you're doing some more improvised kind of stuff, the more space you can take up within that. But as a drummer, you might be like restricted volume wise a little bit more in a trio than you would on like a top 40 pop. Like that's a gig where you got to really play out. So that can be fun in that. I'm just more limited with like, I can't like, I'm just gonna be playing more straight up pocket and like filling in certain spots and maybe chopping here or there. But the stylistic things are going to be different, but I try to approach it the same way where I'm trying to just be as in the moment as I can be and serve what the music calls for. I also want to be myself, but I want to be a version of myself that gets along with everybody else in the band. And the bigger the bands, like the more people you have to consider in the conversation. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
so
Um,
that's the I don't know, with that in every different context and every different band. I do try to approach it the same way, even though there are going to be a lot of differences depending on if it's a big band or a trio or if it's a pop gig or whatever.
but
You know,
you're not saying, "Hey, I'm only going to play jazz." You're open to these new experiences.
yeah, I try to respect. I love a ton of music. I don't know if too many people who only listen to one thing. Really, I feel like we all love a lot of different styles of music, and it's like that famous Duke Ellington quote: "There's only two kinds of music. There's good music, and then there's the other kind." Um, I just rewatched the Quincy Jones documentary, and that's like got to be the most inspiring documentary I think I've ever seen. He's like spanned more musical genres and more decades and been at like the forefront of innovating at all of them. And he was always like, he's one of the greatest producers and jazz arrangers, trumpet player, and he was always just like not concerned about what style it was. He was always on to the next thing. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
if Quincy didn't care, then why should I? Just only pigeonhole myself to one thing. I love a lot of styles, and I want to respect all of the traditions that come with it. And I don't want to just sound like a jazz musician trying to play funk or a jazz musician just trying to play Dilla, because that's overdone anyway. It's like there's way too many people just trying to sound like Chris Dave. Love Chris Dave. He's one of the greatest, but it's like all the people trying to copycat him reminds me of like Charles Mingus talking about if Charlie Parker were a gunslinger, there'd be a whole bunch of dead copycats.
yeah,
Because
and
it's
I could say the same thing with for guitarists with like, you know,
yeah,
Kurt Rosenwinkel, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
everybody's going for the monotone, like legato thing, which could be cool, but it's just, don't limit yourself or find your own thing.
Totally. And what's interesting too, how you've gone to experience something that a lot of people, you're a little younger than me, I
Mhm.
think. And but even like playing at Newport,
Yeah,
fantastic thing to happen. When I saw that you
yeah,
played, I was like kind of like, yeah, of course.
man, yeah, very grateful. What a legendary stage. Yeah, I've been able to play there twice, and the second time was like this is a fluke freak thing. It had like nothing to do with me, I don't think, but technically I can say it's the closest I'll ever get to subbing for Jack DeJohnette, because DeJohnette got sick and his band canceled, and last minute they called Eric Rosenbacher, the saxophonist from Cincinnati, who they know and they work with. He's there at the festival every year helping construct the stages. So like, hey, DeJohnette dropped out. You want to put a band together? Like this is like a couple days notice, maybe, or maybe I got like 4 or 5 days notice at most. Maybe it's only 3 days. I forget. He's like, yeah, let me call some people.
Was
And
that
so
surreal?
yeah, it was crazy. Like, holy shit, we got asked to play in Jack DeJohnette's place. Like, they just had a hole. You know, they could have asked anybody, but Eric was right there, and they're like, yo, you want to put together a band again? Because you guys did this already, you killed it. Try it again. We just did trio that time, but that time we got to, I was on the platform stage. They roll you out. It was one of the main stages. I think it's called the Quad. It's like the second biggest stage. That was very surreal. Definitely trying to absorb that. I had to switch the time frame of the set too because I had a wedding gig later and I didn't want to sub it out. So I had to rush after we played that to like a wedding gig.
Oh, you had a
Um,
wedding gig right after.
yeah, like that night because we played like maybe we were scheduled at 1 p.m. and I was like, "Yo, could we play earlier at noon or like 12:30 by
Yeah.
chance?" And so they swapped our time frame with Antonio Sanchez. So that meant like Antonio was like putting his drums together in the back while we were sound checking. I was like, dang, that's Antonio back there. All right, let me play his like clave thing in 5 and see if he notices
Did
while I'm
you
sound
did you
checking.
get to meet any people there that were the first time you were meeting them and had some interesting exchanges or
Ooh.
anything like that?
I mean, Antonio came up to me afterward and dapped me up, said like generic, sound great, whatever. I was wondering if he heard that like thing I was trying to quote for him because that was a surreal moment for me, and I tried to save that for my father because we definitely loved Antonio together. My father was a great drummer, and so he's the reason I do this. Um, and he's the reason I play left-handed backwards too because he was left-handed and he set up backwards. So I can curse him forever for like setting me up the wrong way, but I mean, whatever. It's only
No,
inconvenient
and that
but
the spirit's always there, and it's in you, the music from him.
yeah, thank you. But it was cool meeting Antonio. I try to save that for my dad because we definitely were watching his instructional DVDs when I was in high school and like trying to absorb all that. So that was a cool moment. I got to see Joel Ross again, who I can kind of consider a friend now. I've been able to play with him and been a big fan of his for a long time. Who else did I meet for the first time? Oh, I got to meet Lave. She's like a pop jazz singer. Went to
Oh yeah,
Berkeley.
yeah,
She's
I know.
like exploding. Yeah, I was like, wait, she's here?
I
I
thought
was like, yo,
I'm not sure how her
Leve.
name's.
I think it's Leve.
I've heard a bunch of ways.
Yeah, I think I've heard her say her own name, so I'm trying to just remember how she says it because she'll definitely say her name more accurately than anybody else. I think she says Leve. anyway, I got like a selfie with her because I was like, "Yo, my girlfriend loves you." I like her music too. I don't check it out enough, but
Charlie, let me ask you a question.
yeah.
A lot of people are looking to make the move out east from wherever,
Hmm.
the Midwest or something. Were you able to carry your honesty and your approach to the East Coast, or did you feel like you needed to maybe like unlearn some things or needed to adjust slightly, or were you able to just stay true and just
Yeah, I was able to just keep doing my thing. I think it's cool when people come from wherever and they bring that kind of swing with them or their vibe. And I've heard other people encourage that too, because there's so many people here. It's so saturated, but it makes it so like there's space for every new kind of thing. So if
yeah,
you
I
come
was in the
to Cincinnati
Midwest
and
in
you got
last
that
year.
Midwest, yeah,
I was in the Midwest last year, and you were already out here in the East Coast. I'm like, oh, I was like, it's
yeah,
but you know, to be able to bring your roots is great.
yeah, it is cool. I know like there are general stylistic like different generalities about like where people feel the beat in the Midwest or maybe in Chicago, people are more laid back, and New York is very pushing and like borderline rushing or just flat out rushing. But I feel like I kind of had a propensity to like push the beat in a swing context, or it depends on the tempo. If it's like an up thing, I've listened to so much Tony Williams with Miles that like I'm used to on like a super burning thing, like if anything, just rushing, just like whatever to keep the momentum and energy up. But playing with JD Allen, I got to do that during the pandemic a lot, and I feel like that gave me an outlet to really like be aggressive and just light the fire. And so when I came here, I don't feel like I play much differently. I definitely have learned a lot, and I've been able to be way more comfortable, not having to like kind of, I don't want to say dumb my phrases down, but I think in the Midwest I was very concerned with making sure everybody was on the same page with me when I'm wrapping up a solo. And I'd hate when I like try to make it as clear as possible and then people come in on like the wrong beat or whatever. And I'm like, it's like no matter how crazy I go, I want it to still be clear as day, like where the one is. So I found myself doing that a lot in the Midwest, and I'm not that concerned with resolving in common areas now. I'm more just free to keep the ball rolling, keep it like a slow burn, and try not to resolve every cliche
Yeah, no, I have you.
phrase.
I understand what you're saying. You just want to be you and not having to be so like doing the best. You know, I get what you're
There's
saying. It's
still a
like,
way to do that to make sure everybody's included, but I don't want to like, yeah, I think it's more accept, or it's more like everybody's on the same page, or maybe not even that. Uh, it's kind of like just a fuck it attitude where I'm just gonna not try and be as cliche just for the sake of making sure everybody's like ready to go at the same time.
yeah, that the
Even
whole
if they
fuck.
go, yeah, even if you get off a beat, like whatever, cool, we'll just figure it out. That can be
Yeah,
cool. I like, and I remember hearing something about DeJohnette talking about like how some of his favorite moments in music are when he gets lost, because then that's when you're really creating something new. And you got to really, that's when you're actually improvising, and you got to really actually listen and figure out like, all right, well, how are we going to get out of this? Like, now there's something new happening. And so I'm not afraid of that. Not that I was ever afraid of it, but I just, sometimes you can tell you're like, all right, cool. In this context, I might just try and keep it more just like simple for the sake of everybody else. And now I'm not as concerned with that. So
have you gone back to the Midwest to play since you've been in New York?
yeah, I've been back every year, maybe around Christmas time, or I was back in August. Why was I back in August? My brother's a singer songwriter, and we recorded some stuff. I can't remember why else. I played a gig with this great alto player, Colin Palmieri, who's from like the Cleveland area, but went to the school in Cincinnati. Um, he's great. My friend Justin Dawson's still been running a jam session in Cincinnati every
Yeah,
Monday
how's he doing? How
at
he's
the lounge.
doing?
He's doing great. And like, of course, it's like right when I move, the the jazz club there that's been bringing in Christian McBride and Peter Bernstein and all these big names, like of course, like right when I move, it's like all my friends that are in Cincinnati get to be those big names rhythm sections. So like Justin just played with Peter Bernstein last weekend, and like gets to play with all these big names. It's like that's awesome. He's doing great.
Is Schwartz's Point still open?
Yeah, yeah. I was supposed to actually play there later this month, but I got hit up for this random thing out of town that I'm going to be doing around Christmas and New Year's now, so I can't do that. But I love Zarlene and I love Schwartz Point. So every time we're back around the holidays, we my band with Andrew Haug and it's called Onelin. We try to book a gig there because we miss you. It's a cool spot. If you're ever in
Ohio's great.
Cincinnati,
There's so many great cities, man, and just so
yeah,
many good players. I'm telling you, it's just, I mean, it's its own, I'm not saying, I mean, people think, people do put New York on a pedestal, which is fine. There's certain things to put on a pedestal, but there's
yeah.
just as good of musicians anywhere, and if,
Getting back to your thought about a lot of people wanting to make the move out here, that's awesome. I also think we're living in an age now where like you don't just have to move to New York to make it. Especially like the positive end of social media does allow the freedom to like you can grow your own audience if you really play that game well enough and you get a big enough following, like you can kind of be based anywhere. And there are a lot of like artists that I mean they have lived in New York for a time, but like Mackay McRaven and Marquis Hill, they're like both Chicago based still and they play all around the world all the time. So you don't have to be based in New York like people used to think you had to be. If you want to move here to, just experience playing with some of the best musicians around, because a lot of the best musicians live here, but not all of them. There's great
yeah,
scenes everywhere else.
you go to
You
move
can,
to New
but
York, go to the Village Vanguard every night for a week, and you'll see what it's about.
yeah, that's a that's a very special place. I think that's definitely like the best jazz club. If I had to choose one, that's like the best jazz club in the world,
Well,
and has like
that's where I was just there this week. So,
yeah, it's just it's historic, and you can
Wi-
feel it every time you're there. It'd be a dream
wi-
to play there.
is
But
that's your? Would you say that's in the one of the
I
bucket
don't know.
list things?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, that's I'll say that's a bucket list thing. I have a weird thing with making that like a goal, like a life goal. Like if I don't achieve that, then I'll be, then I'll be sad because I don't know. I
you
don't know
gotta
if
let
it's
go of that.
yeah, I don't know if it's that based around like the club or the venue as it is about like just the journey. I'm trying not to put too much stock in the destination and just put stock in myself now and the most rough parts. If I can be happy now, then I'm setting myself up more for success. Because you hear this with like actors and celebrities all the time, like, oh, it's I won't be happy until I receive the third Golden Globe award or whatever that Jim Carrey said. He's like, I'm just thinking of this. He's at the Golden Globe Awards. They announce him now, two-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey. He walks out and he thinks that sounds so funny. He's just like, I'm not just Jim Carrey. I'm two-time Golden Globe winning Jim
Oh
Carrey.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I won't be enough until I'm three-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey. It's like I won't be enough until I play at the Vanguard. Like I don't really,
I thought, like the
it
last
would be
like
cool
20.
to do that, but
No,
whatever.
I understand what you're the last 20 years I've been like always focused on the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. It's never enough. And like it took me like 20 years and I'm like finally like now I'm enjoying the moment. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
And that's the thing. You're 100% right. Enjoy the journey.
yeah,
When you talk about enjoying the journey, it's almost like has a spiritual component to it, I think.
definitely.
Do you
Because you got to remind yourself to do that at like the darkest moments, like in the moments where you're struggling the most. You got to find a way to find the joy and to appreciate that the struggle or the sacrifice that you're making is in some way making you more prepared for the next thing or making you stronger or building thicker skin. you I gotta try to zoom out and look above myself because it's like when I get too focused on my problems, I gotta remind myself I'm not that big of it. Like my problems are not that important in the grand scheme of like the world's problems. It's like I should be focusing on bigger things. Um, but it is a very spiritual thing because if I don't know if you can't love yourself in your darkest moments, there's no guarantee that like you will be happy once you finally achieve this thing that you thought was going to unlock your happiness.
I think happiness is an internal thing.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with external
Yeah,
stuff.
it's not as easy as just like a choice, but you do have to choose to reframe your mindset and to see the good in yourself.
You're a little older now since when we met in about
Yeah,
6 years ago. Has your emotional approach to the music evolved? Because I think that's something that happens as you get older. Maybe you
sure.
go through some things and that influences it.
Yeah, I think the older I get, the more reverence I have for what came before me and like what the people who sacrificed everything they did to put out the music they did, what they went through. And I have just a deeper level of appreciation and respect for it the more that I go through. Because it's not only just like, oh, these people innovated these things and they were doing this. It's like, no, it's like really, this was their outlet. This was their, it just feels deeper. Um, and so I do take that a little more seriously, but I don't know. I don't know how that changes like what I decide to do, other than it just gives me more admiration and respect and motivation, maybe.
No, definitely. And let me ask you this. I mean, you've been on the journey now. You were based in the Midwest for a while. You're out here.
Mhm.
You're doing some great things. You're playing clubs. You have a reputation. You're getting better all the time.
I hope so. I don't know.
I've seen some videos, and I mean, I always saw you were great.
I'm
But
definitely growing, even if I'm not practicing. Like I know over time because I'm able to keep playing. Like I'm only going to get better and better.
definitely. I mean,
I hope so. I hope the more time goes on, we all just get better and better at what it is we want. Becoming better versions of ourselves, whatever that looks like.
for sure? What do you think you're most grateful for about at this point in your life? In the music world, if you want to, we can say
If
that, if you
narrow it
want.
to music, just the continued opportunity to keep getting chosen by people to you know be able to perform at the with the opportunities that I am able to perform for. Because I don't book that many gigs of my own. I'm pretty spoiled as a drummer, a rhythm section player, just like used to just being asked to, can you do this? Can you do that? And just saying yes or no. I have, been trying to fight that because it's like, okay, with a lot of people here and with a lot of specific opportunities, like I'm not going to get called for that. Like that's only going to happen if I like initiate that. And, the cold emailing thing is annoying. So there's aspects of that I'm no longer trying to rely on. But I do acknowledge that the bulk of my opportunities come from people that I have worked with asking me and
That's your
me.
journey, you know what
So
I'm
that
saying?
I've just got to be grateful for that, you know,
Definitely.
and for that expanding with
That's
certain
your
people.
journey.
Yeah, that is.
Charlie, this is great. So, I mean, I'm so glad we got a chance to reconnect, and I hope we'll get to work together again. I'm
Yeah,
sure
me
we will
too.
make it happen. But where can everybody find you on social media and stuff?
Just Facebook, Instagram. You can just type in my name, you'll find it. Uh, Instagram handle is my last name, Scheft, and then Boyardee.
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
I'm trying not to get sued by Chef Boyardee, but I'm not famous or
No, you'll
popular
be
enough.
fine.
So I thought about wanting to like, if I got an endorsement with any, screw a symbol endorsement. I want to get a Chef Boyardee endorsement. I think that would be cooler. If I just
That'd be
got
great.
free ravioli or whatever. Screw an instrument endorsement, man. I'm more focused on ravioli.
Yeah, man. No, but this is great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. And it's great.